page 6. And we're discussing the idea of, that was the last thing that we learned yesterday. And the Rabi gave us a moshel of the koiches of rotzen and oinig, willpower and pleasure. And he told us that they are called koiches makifim shebenefesh. They're not the inner koiches pnimiyim, but rather encompassing koiches. And I gave you the example of if kol almin. If there would be no association, it wouldn't be called kol almin. They soiviv. So the Alter Rebbe argues that itself tells you that this does a relationship of sorts with the almin, with the worlds. Nevertheless, what is the content? What is the teichen between the oir of Seviv and the world? Chasidus gives in general is the example of a nes, because a nes is that way. I'm talking about, simply speaking. What happened? Parcha nishmos. It says our souls jumped out of our bodies and we had a faint. So deal impact on us? Absolutely. We had klois hanefesh. We had an experience that was overwhelming. So we had the encompassing kochos. Nevertheless, hariheh, right, Boaz? Your hand can have pleasure from playing the piano, your mouth from your feet from dancing. And they owe power and pleasure power from the highest, meaning from understanding something with one. And when both are active, it creates a mind's eye that the mind has the eye. The mind sees it. That's what he says. And so he says, so it's also true regarding the lowest level of the lowest koyach. It takes a rotzen. It takes a willpower. What? Movement, zrika, or throwing. That koyach harotzen and the nug that relates how good that will be. That's what he says. V'gam zois the be'eis achas yochel lios eislapshus the rotze v'oinig b'shnei inyonim ke'echot. He says we also see an interesting thing, Boaz, that it's an interesting chazal, Shmuel. The Gemara says when Rabbi Yehuda Nossi was involved with emotions, kishu be'ava, when he's in love, you can't be at the same in fear at all. If you're in the love mode, you're not in the fear mode. If you're in the fear mode, you're not in the love mode. Make up your mind. Which mode are you in at the time? That's all true, the Rebbe says, by conversely, by both in the mind and the heart at the same time. In other words, all these mishalim, right? That force is not coming from koiches pnimiyim or koiches makif. Atzmiyim. It's coming from something that transcends both, and hence it's the etzem. And when the etzem is touched, it could do things that's not normal, which means a concealment that exists in a non-existence form, and a concealment that exactly very good. The coal is a helim sheba mitzias. Whereas in the rock, It's so non-existent that if you do not on another rock or whatever, you don't rub it, you won't get any fire, because the fire is so non-existent in the rock. But to say that there's no fire at all, no idea of fire in the rock, that's not true. So he says, the zehoy of the recipient. Imzed, nevertheless, harei hatoikif shebekoiches makifim. Earlier, the intensity of the koiches makifim, of rotzen, of willpower, and oining and play. And betachlis hatoikif, they are at its ultimate passion. Mashein kin toikif kazeh, mashein toikif kazeh. We're and in the hand and foot at the same time, but it's not a passionate. Willpower comes with movement, with decree and forcibility. Well, as Ratzon says, I want it to be this way. That's called Ratzon, will. It's drawn, it's pleasurable, so you're not being forced to do it. But both together, regarding umasik, ki be'eira b'derech helem v'nivre b'chol zois hini hanivroyim teifsim mo'ir. Comes the save of kol almim. So again, he's saying that when it comes to Memala kol almim, although Memala kol almim, the godly force and energy based on the recipient, the makabel, and lefi erech ha-makabel, therefore the makabel has less existence or no existence. The makabel doesn't impact the or. So the or is more pure.